Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Bank of America, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Antares Investment Partners, Arbor Realty Trust, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Helmsley Spear, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Jackson Development Group, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moynihan Organization, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Sutphin Properties, the Wyckoff Organization, Extreme Construction and Deconstruction.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoll, host of Building New York. 54 years ago, in Uruguay, a young guy is born who subsequently comes to America, and I'm going to tell you, it's a very interesting story because today he's probably the largest single individual landowner in Westchester of office buildings. And I have Robert Weisz, president of RPW Group. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
You said to me that your grandparents lived in Bialystok, Hungary. And what happened? What year did they come over?
1928, my grandmother, who was the matriarch of the family, decided that things were bad enough in Poland, it was time to go. So she gathered the family and said, you know, I have great news for you. We are going to move, and we're going to move to Uruguay. And my father, that at the time was 4, he said, why is that great news? Why is Uruguay so wonderful? And her answer was, it's because it's very far away, and that makes it wonderful to me. So at the time, they had got the money from the family that helped them to pay for the trip, and they moved to Uruguay, to Montevideo, which was, I have to tell you, was a hell of an experience for a family that only spoke Yiddish to move to South America and start a new life.
And your dad, he was a scribe.
My grandfather.
Your grandfather, I mean, your grandfather was a scribe, and he would write Torahs. And what do you do from that in Uruguay?
I guess he was the one that had the biggest cultural shock. And my grandmother was very driven, and she pretty much organized everybody's life within the family. But for him, it was very difficult to adapt. So he eventually used to go door to door and rebuild mattresses. I don't know if you remember this. You've probably seen it in movies. They had a kind of a wagon, and they will get the mattresses, and they will just remanufacture the mattress right on site. And he learned the trade, and that's what he did. And he was not really the money maker of the family. My grandmother became a seamstress, and my father and his brothers started working at a very young age, 10, 11 years old.
And you said to me, your parents were kosher, but your father and his sisters went out on the weekends. They were selling what?
Yeah, there were 3 boys, and obviously they had to find a way to earn a living. So my grandmother encouraged them to go to the flea market on weekends and sell bacon and sell ham and sausages. Obviously, she had it very clear. That was business. You could not eat it. You could touch it, but not eat it. And obviously, that's not what they did. But nevertheless, that's how she set things up.
Now, how does your dad get into the furniture business?
Retail
and the furniture business.
Yeah, he started working in a furniture factory, just sweeping the floors and helping, and learned the trade slowly, and eventually he learned how to make furniture. And at one point, at the age of 22, he decided with another friend to start a little shop, and that's what they did. They rented a small garage, and they got a couple of machines, and they started making furniture. And eventually, he created a good furniture factory for Uruguay. Uruguay is obviously a very small country, and things are in a very small scale. But he had a furniture factory, and eventually he opened a furniture store, and which still exists today. And my two brothers are running it.
Let's go to, okay, you graduate high school and then you go to the university in Uruguay. But what happens then?
Uruguay had only one university. It was a public school, and so I started going to the school. I was studying accounting, and in 1972 we had what they were called the Tupamaros. That was an urban guerrilla group, and they attacked the university. The government shut it down and remained down for a couple of years. So when that happened, I looked for different alternatives. There was no other place in Uruguay to go to college. So ideally, I like to come to the States. I had two minor issues. One was I didn't speak English. Two, I couldn't afford it. So the alternative was an American school in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, which I visited, and I got a scholarship. So I spent 4 years not studying accounting. I studied business administration. So from 1973 to 1976, I lived in Sao Paulo, and then I graduated in December 76, and in January 77, I arrived to New York.
You arrive in New York. You cannot speak English. Could you read English? A little bit.
Mildly, yes.
And you basically spoke Spanish and Portuguese.
That's
You
right.
come here with $3,000, and you go to the 92nd Street Y on Lexington Avenue. And what do you do?
Well, the first thing I did was to enroll in a program that Columbia had for foreigners to learn English, and I will attend in the morning, and then I will literally walk the streets of New York. The first thing I did the day I arrived was to get a map, and I started walking down each one of the avenues, and I had a very clear goal that was to start selling furniture. That's what I knew a little bit.
Now, who did you sell the furniture to? I mean, did you go to retail stores?
I will go to retail stores.
And you were selling the furniture made in Uruguay, or was it in Taiwan?
No, that was made in Uruguay, but frankly, I was trying to develop the product. So I was not really selling a specific product. I would visit stores and try to find out what the market was looking for. And I spent a number of months doing that, and I came up with a few concepts that were very simple furniture. A couple of tables similar to this, a cocktail table or end tables.
You told me there was a special chair. The chair was the thing that helped make you a lot of money.
That developed a little later, and at the time, the best-selling product in the United States was the Brewer chair. The Brewer chair was a chrome chair with a cane seat and back that was designed by Marcel Brewer in 1919. And then after the patent ran out, it became a football item, and the price was very competitive, was manufactured all over the world, and I was being sold everywhere. The problem with the chair was that it was a cane seat and back, and that will sag and eventually break. So through the contacts I had made, I met a fellow named Stanley Phillips, and he had been in the industry for 30, 40 years. He said, you know, I see you want to do things in this industry. I have a little problem. I have a great product, but I need it upholstered. I have it in cane. I need a variation that I can offer to my customers. If you can come up with this, I think I can sell it. So I learned how to upholster, and I did a few prototypes. And within a period of 2 years, I was selling 500-600 chairs a day. So it became probably what it was at the time, one of the largest distributors of brewer chairs in the New York area.
And at that time, you had a warehouse in Jamaica, I think?
I had a warehouse.
You were renting a warehouse.
Yeah, well, that was the very first garage. I had a basement in Jamaica. Then I rented a warehouse in Jersey City. And eventually I bought my first building.
And I think buying the first building, because you had no idea that you were ever going to be in the real estate business. I mean, furniture, fine. Real estate, no. And what happens? What year is this?
This is 1979.
1979. You're how old?
At the time I was born in 26.
You're 26 years of age. You go out to a Sears department store's parking lot in North Bergen on Kennedy Boulevard, and you meet this individual to buy a warehouse that you only really wanted 10,000 square feet, and it was a 30,000 square foot. And what does this gentleman tell you?
So I had saved $40,000. I had enough for a down payment on a 10,000 square foot building, and I was looking and looking. And eventually I meet this broker that tells me to meet him at the Sears parking lot. And so I was very busy during the day assembling chairs myself. So now I stop assembling chairs. I get in my car. I run to this parking lot to meet the broker. So when I get there, it's January. It's probably 20 below. I park right next to his car. I open my window. I say, I'm so-and-so. I say, okay, we are ready. We are going to go to see this building. It's a few minutes away. So, well, before we go, tell me, what are we going to see? He said, well, I have a 30,000 square foot warehouse. And when he said that, I said, you know, I still have 100 chairs to make today. I have no time to waste. I can't afford 10,000. How can I afford 30,000? So he looked at me and said, how old are you? I said, I'm 26. He said, I have grandchildren older than you are. Shut up and follow me. So I follow him, obviously. When you're 26 and somebody talks to you like that, you just do what they tell you. And 2 hours later, I had bought the building that we went to see.
So now you bought this building that you only really needed 10,000 square feet, and this industrialist from Uruguay says, maybe I can rent out the 20,000 square feet. You paid $120,000 for the building, if I remember.
125,000.
125, yes. And you had the seller took back a mortgage.
The seller took back a mortgage.
So
right.
you had 85,000, and what do? You go out and you rent the other 20,000, which pays off your mortgage.
I rented the space that I didn't use. I used that obviously to pay the mortgage. The building was in Weehawken, right off the Lincoln Tunnel. So I had a lot of traffic going by the building. I had a big sign, and eventually I rented all the space that I didn't need. And a fellow one day walks in and says, you know, I need some space. And I was ready to tell him I have no space left. And he said, you know, let me talk for a minute. He said, you know, I just came from Germany and I'm going to manufacture windows. I need a factory in 6 months. Now all I need is an office and some storage space for my samples. But I need 10,000 feet, I need high ceilings, I need open space, good loading. That's exactly what I had. So I showed him what I had, he loved it. I rented an office to him and some storage space, and within 6 months, I found a second building. I moved my operation, and he rented the space I had.
And then there's a third building, which I think the interesting story about the older gentleman who had matrimonial problems. What was that building?
Well,
we're staying in Jersey, then we're going to go to Westchester in a little while.
There was a fellow that was living in Florida, and he remarried. He divorced his wife. He was in his 70s and married a 30-year-old girl. And as a result of that, his children wouldn't talk to him. So he ended up having a very large building in New Jersey and nobody to take care of it, and the building was empty. So one day he calls me up. He said, you know, you've been looking at my building. I know you are interested. I have a problem. Somebody vandalized the building. The town is giving me fines. I need somebody to take care of it. If you're ready, I'll give you financing to buy it. Just come over, clean up. But you need to go today to clean up the building. Take my word for it. I'm going to sell it to you. And that was just a great experience, because that was the first retail project I did. That was on Kennedy Boulevard. It was also a 30,000-foot building that eventually became a strip mall. I brought the U.S. Post Office to that building and a number of other stores. It became a very successful project, and he became a friend.
So how do you make the leap from selling chairs and furniture to the real estate business? When do you decide to leave the furniture business, which was the safety, even though you were making some good money in the real estate business?
By 1985, I had bought 4 buildings. And at that time, I was selling one of them. So for the first time, within the process that I was involved in terms of making furniture, buying buildings, it's the first time that I saw some liquidity. So at that point, I felt comfortable enough to sell my furniture business, which practically sold it for very little money, because the dollar at the time was exactly the opposite of now. Dollar was very strong. Imports were very inexpensive. The competition was very tough. And so I sold the furniture business in '85. And I kept buying buildings after that.
So when do you go out to Westchester? I mean, you're living in the city, you get married, and you're running these buildings in New Jersey, and then subsequently you go up to Westchester. How do you decide? I mean, it's a nice neighborhood, but why Westchester?
It's probably a similar experience that many had. I got married in 1985, and my wife said, I want to live in Westchester. And when your wife said you want to live in Westchester, most likely you're going to live in Westchester. So I moved to Westchester in 1987. But between 85 and 87, we started planning that. And at the time, we had a baby already. So since that happened, by then I had done probably 20 projects in New Jersey. And I was developing in Newark a number of projects. And when we moved to Westchester, I decided, obviously, to buy a building locally.
A building? You go to Mount Vernon and you buy not a building, you buy an abandoned building, the Edison School, which was abandoned for 30 years, that the town was going to knock it down and make it a parking lot. And Robert Weisz does what?
Yeah, that was a very rewarding experience. Mount Vernon was ready to knock down this building because they had sold it 3 or 4 times. And everyone that had bought it before did something with the building, sold some parts of it, or the furniture, or some of the architectural features of it, and eventually give it back to the city. So the mayor, at the time, his name was Ronald Blackwood, a wonderful individual, and I met with him. He said, you know, I've been embarrassed a few times. I don't want to be embarrassed again. He said, you want to buy this building, what are you going to do with it? And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with it, but I was prepared to improve the building. I knew that something eventually will happen. So I bought the building, I made a deal with the city. They sold it to me for the taxes that were owed, which was $12,000. And I invested pretty good money at the time, probably $500,000. I did the exterior of the building and started marketing it. And sure enough, we rented. We rented the entire building. We rented to a government office. And so that gave me a chance to redevelop the entire facility. And I did 3 more buildings on the same block.
Including the movie theater that I knew very well.
Yes.
Where the birds were flying, which was also vacant for about 20 years.
Yes, yeah. That was another project. That was the RKO that was really in the heart of the city, right on Main Street, Gramerton Avenue in Mount Vernon. It was abandoned for many years. And that was a very exciting project because we demolished the interior of the building. And I built a new structure within the old structure, put in 5 floors of offices, ground floor retail. It became the prime space in Mount Vernon, and that's a project that I did in the early 90s and is fully leased today. We don't own it anymore, but you know, a very rewarding part of this project is not only it's sound business, we made money, but it had a great impact in the community. We improved the neighborhood, buildings around our buildings improve as well. And in Mount Vernon, I did 9 different projects, and it was just a great time and a wonderful experience.
So what happens? You go to 1995 White Plains Boulevard. What's the next one?
You
leave Mount Vernon, you go into White Plains?
Well, I didn't leave Mount Vernon. My office was still there, but a building came up for sale. A bank had foreclosed the building a few months prior. They put it on the market, and I ended up buying it at 34 South Broadway. And it was a building that had no parking. However, it was next door to the Westchester Mall, and it was 20% lease. And we did pretty much the same thing that we had done with previous buildings. Came in, improved the building, improved the common areas, just changed the synergy of the building and leased it all up.
But that's your tendency. You take these, let's call them bad apples, and then you polish them, you cleanse them, and you buy a number of buildings in Westchester. And then let's go to the real the chutzpah type of approach when you buy the former Kraft headquarters. What happens there? Tell my audience about that.
Many buildings later, exactly 46 buildings later.
46 buildings.
46 buildings later. Obviously, I had enough practice. The old General Foods building in Rye became available for sale. The building is 1,000,001 square feet cover on 55 acres. And Altria, the current owner, decides to sell it vacant.
I mean, the acreage is wonderful. The building, people used to call it the vinyl...
the Taj Mahal.
The Taj Mahal.
The Taj Mahal.
It was white?
It's white, it's majestic. You see it from 287, you see it many miles away. And it's a very distinct building. It looks like a spacecraft. It looks like the Enterprise.
But it was when Kraft owned it, it was their corporate headquarters. Now Robert Weisz takes a building which is completely vacant, which people, it was 2005, people said, this guy has done a lot of buildings, but he may have bitten a little bit more than he ever did before. So what do you do to this building? I mean, it's magnificent property, but you have to have vision. You have to have creativeness.
We had a concept, and the concept was that Westchester, which is one of the wealthiest communities in the United States, and it's very close to New York, it has great transportation, and all the things that we know about Westchester, wonderful quality of life, did not have outstanding office buildings. And what I mean by outstanding, I mean, we didn't have great facilities with all the amenities, with restaurants and with gyms, with squash courts, with a car wash, with a bank in the building, with a beauty parlor in the building, with facilities that would really make people's life very, very easy to deal with in terms of going to work and taking care of everything. And I thought that building will give us that opportunity. We had the scale. We needed to allocate approximately 100,000 square feet to common areas. To do that, you obviously need a very large building. And we had the footage. We had the image. The building is perceived as a great structure. And so the first thing I did was to lay out the plans for amenities that will be second to none. We have a cafeteria that sits 600 people, and it's an atrium with a ceiling that is 60 feet high, with incredible views of a great lake. We have a car wash, we have a beauty parlor, we have 2 squash courts, we have a movie theater, we have a conference center, We even have a TV station that broadcasts from the building. We have a TV studio. So the bet was that companies will want to be there. And 2 years later, the building is 100% leased, and it has been the most successful leasing venture in the history of Westchester County.
And after that, you buy 200 Mamaroneck Avenue?
And after that, I bought 2 more buildings.
But I think
440 Mamaroneck Avenue.
But the IBM building is another situation.
1133.
Tell me about that.
1133 Westchester. Well, it's interesting you asked that because we opened the building on Saturday. And we had an event for the Arts Council, the Westchester Arts Council, with the largest gala ever in the history of the county. We had 700 people, and we celebrated Ruby Dee. She was our guest. And the interesting thing about the IBM building is also a very large facility. We have 650,000 square feet of rentable space, but we did not have the focal point of the similar to what 800 Westchester Avenue, which is a General Foods building, has. We didn't have a large atrium, so we built a new atrium, and we built a massive atrium. We built 25,000 square feet that will house over 1,000 people, and we'll have the restaurants, and we'll have the bank branch, and the beauty parlor, and the fitness
And this one,
center.
even a daycare, right?
And this is a larger parcel. We have 75 acres. So we're going to have a daycare, and we're going to have a hotel. A hotel was just approved 2 weeks ago. We have not decided on the flag yet.
So here's an individual who came over, couldn't read or write English to speak of, who's done rather well. And you own how much square footage?
2 million square
2
feet.
million square feet in Westchester, probably the largest private independent. You own it yourself. Your employees love you, because I remember hearing about the story about the funeral. One of the employees died, or parents, somebody died, and everyone you gave off. But as we were saying before, your mentor in your life?
My mentor was my father.
And you have 2 children?
I have 2 kids, yes.
Right. And one is at Harvard?
I have one at Harvard and one at Trinity College, and one is 21, one is 18.
So would you like them to go into the furniture business or the real estate business?
I want them to go in any business that they will be as happy as I am doing what I do.
And I think you're happy, and I really think you've given my audience, myself, a good perspective that you have become a builder of New York. Thank you for being here, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Bank of America, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Antares Investment Partners, Arbor Realty Trust, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Helmsley Spear, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Jackson Development Group, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moynihan Organization, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Sutphin Properties, the Wyckoff Organization, Extreme Construction and Deconstruction.